Hey there, chart friends. Lamont here from Chart Guys, checking in on the solar sector. If my charts will load. Hey, oh, I thought we had and I wanted to talk about it regarding the potential. I feel like we had these tops marked off the other day. Because we were looking potentially for just a healthy higher low to hold over all of these tops here. Obviously, is not what happened by any means, and so this is a good example of why it's a good idea to just kind of leave your drawings up, and just a reminder that you can actually hide them from you. For example, it disappear. You just click the eyeball over there. Okay, so I guess we should start on the daily time frame. On the daily time frame, obviously this is not a good look for bulls. Huge, massive volume on this bear day after an attempt to confirm this daily bull flag. So that being said, the weekly still looks okay, although that is a lot of volume for 3 days of trading, right? Because this was the whole entirety of last week, and so we have 2 more days of trading, and I imagine it's going to exceed the previous week's volume. So now that weekly consolidation has begun, we are just scouting a higher low over 47.98. So the bulls have quite a lot of space in which to do so. I'm going to mark off this significant close now in case it comes into play. I'm not saying we'll get that deep, but if we do get that deep, I want something to just kind of stand out to me right away. So obviously way more volume than one would like to see, and I think if we zoom into the hourly, we can see it's not a odd place for price to pause. There are many reasons for it to potentially find some support here. We have this old channel median line coming back into play. We have this a shelf of support here from this previous just a little bit of price action. Multiple bottoms are here, so an unreasonable place to anticipate the potential of some support. If tomorrow we were to see a gap down towards the lower end of the channel and towards this shelf, hourly RSI would be just buried, and that would be a fairly good setup in my opinion to go long, and after which bears will be very much scouting it an hourly lower high. There was no hourly lower high today. This was just a straight shot down ever since pre-market throughout the entire day, so should give a nice opportunity towards the short side as well after this bounce, if bounce eventually. Whatever the case may be, however the bounce is like, there will be shorting opportunities. And so now, while we were potentially looking for a hold of that as support earlier, now that we have this big bearish look on this high volume, we can be looking at those levels potentially for a short. Of course, it's going to depend a lot on how we open tomorrow, but I would have a hard time seeing price break through this entire chop that and then come back and break it back to the upside. That's very unlikely in my. So any bounce tomorrow, we will be looking for that hourly lower high. Wow, increasing bear volume into the end of the day. Yeah, I would not be surprised by a gap down tomorrow on our ETF 10. Weekly higher lows on watch. Okay, ORA confirming the daily downtrend now. Clear this out so you can see it. Confirming this daily downtrend here. This high, this low, a lower high, and a lower low. So price action downtrend. Now, if we zoom into the hourly time frame, we'll see that the channel support is still holding, and price came down to test this this shelf, I guess, this zone of interest that we had marked off, and that was just based on the channel, this previous price action here, and I believe the hourly TD support. All these things creating a bit of a confluence zone here. So the hourly time frame is not oversold yet, and you can see it was a much more controlled sell-off than tan was. So positioned well to bounce. It's positioned better than tan at least, and the volume on the day did not seem crazy. I mean, it's elevated, it's above average, but it's not like tan. Tan was a ton of volume. So ORA is probably a name that I would be more interested in general for the sector, just because, just as a reminder, it has this different setup on the monthly time frame where it had this bunch of basing, and now it is coming to essentially test these previous tops, trying to hold it as support. So I like ORA better than most names that have run really hard because it's been consolidating. So ideally we'll just get more push down right away. If we can see weakness right after the open, get that hourly extended into this shelf of support and the channel support, I would be interested in a potential play like that. So something like that. I think is a bad play. Let me just, yeah, something like that. Essentially, you'd be bottom fishing the lower end of this chop zone over here. So we know that this range was established prior, and it's not terribly unreasonable to think that it may hold again, right? Because we just broke back into this zone, and since we were unable to break over these highs, it's very likely that these supports will get tested. So something along those lines, not a bad idea. And now that the daily trend has gone bearish, we will just be looking for a weekly higher low over 53.44. Okay, JKS, the star of the show. The star of the show on the way up, and now the star on the way down. Massive volume on this big old drop here. Let's check out what it looks like. Oh, I'm sorry. Kill these. So there really hasn't been any daily consolidation on this ticker since 1894. Just like an occasional sideways. Man, there's not even a one little pullback. Wow, that is crazy. See how many candles that is. So JKS finally breaking this 30 bar record, 6 trading weeks of straight upside. Anyway, so this is obviously a big shift in the character of this chart. Zooming into the hourly time frame, I don't even think there was a confirmed downtrend. There's no confirmed hourly downtrend yet, so the bears have just a ton of space in which to set one. And if we were to bounce from here, that kind of looks like, if we were to bounce from here, I wouldn't be surprised if we found some resistance here, but maybe even lower where there was this chopping about. Okay, so I bet you there was some RSI divergence here, and if I was paying attention, that would have been a good trade, very similar to a PTON trade I made recently. Wow, actually there wasn't. Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so this would have been pretty tricky to short because you don't even really have any divergence to help you out here. What I was talking about on PTON is when we were over here. When we were over here on this top, it wasn't a terribly difficult short to take because you had this divergence and you're at the channel resistance. Don't get me wrong, I was sweating the next day, but that's kind of the beauty of puts, right? You can be wrong for a little bit and not take. Anyway, that trade is shaking out now. Let's see. Oh, I got distracted here. So, yep. So JKS, that would have been a tricky short. Would have been very aggressive short. I do think people in the room grabbed it. That's very impressive. Good for you guys. Yona nailed it. And if you were an aggressive bear, you could have positioned off of the pre-market high. That would have been a reasonable play. Just top fishing. I mean, it gave you really good RR, right? Let's say you scaled in. Just marking off like all of these tops. You just wanted to include all these tops over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say you just wanted to include all those tops, scaled into something like that, and then you had your stop above at all-time high. Good RR on that trade, knowing you're at the top of that channel, knowing the name has run really hard. I wish I was paying attention. Okay. Alrighty then. So now that we've broken out of this channel, I would not be surprised if we found some resistance here. So if we could backtest this previous area where there was a little bit of price congestion here, would not be surprised by a backtest of this area here. And even if it were to get as high as the channel support, I would still be interested. Ideally, we could get 5-minute overbought conditions. Ideally, we get 5-minute overbought conditions here. And for that, this range is like too big for you to scale in, or for it to be worthwhile for you to scale in, that's fine. You could just wait for a big reaction, right? Because since we're waiting for an hourly lower high, what you can do is you can just watch the hourly chart, wait for a few candles to print up. Then when you're in the zone of interest, that's when you'll occasionally zoom into the 5-minute time frame and wait for a 5-minute move like this. If you wait for a 5-minute move that's meaningful enough to anticipate a lower high, then you can position for a potential hourly lower high. You don't have to scale in over so much. But this is something that I would be interested in personally. Fairly reasonable. That stop is pretty loose. All right, so let's see what our target would be. Ultimately, we're just looking for a daily high or low over that. There's really nothing nearby to go off of. Let's check the macro chart. Not much. Not much. So this is probably a situation where I just wait for like the first hourly oversold conditions or the next hourly oversold conditions to take profit. But for now, something just a loose setup going into tomorrow, because obviously the open would change. Well, I like this kind of a setup here. Alrighty. See next here. Run, who has been, or I mean, I have been considering it a bit of a tell. I figured as long as we were basing above here that the bulls would be fine, and when we had that gap down today, I was fairly confident that it was not going to be a good day for solar. And just by looking at the other ETF, I mean the other tickers in the sector, you can see they were very different. They had flat opens, right? So Run gave us clues right away because it was getting this gap down open, right? So when you trade one sector, what's one of the advantages that you get when you constantly staying on top of one sector, you can kind of see these correlations, and the correlations will give you clues. Anyway, so if I had put it all together, paying attention to the run weakness, seeing that JKS top fish, that would have been great. But okay, so let's check it out on the hourly time frame. We're watching this potential wedge shaking out, and it could still play out. If this could be a throwover, if it breaks down and then we see a very big high volume return, then could potentially be making higher low plays off of it. I'm gonna leave this shelf. I'm gonna hide it, but we'll just remember it should it come back into play, because obviously that's a key area. It's still a key area, and we will be curious to see how price responds to these previous levels of support. So on the hourly time frame, no sign of the bulls yet. Hourly RSI is in the mid-teens. Well, it got to the mid-teens. Nope, kidding. Still in the low 20s, upper teens. So if we were to get a gap down and run tomorrow, that would probably be a pretty good bounce play as well. And just looking left, you can see that there's a bunch of price action here. So if we were to come down into all of these lows, if we were to get a gap down there, I think that'd be good for a bounce play. And then after that, bears would just be scouting an hourly lower high against 61.35. And I just realized that goes for everybody. So Tan will be looking for an hourly lower high over 78.95. ORA will be looking for an hourly lower high under, I don't like this low volume one. Actually that looks legit. Over 70, under 72.80. JKS will be looking for an hourly lower high under 90.70. Okay, so gap down will look bullish, and then bears will be scouting hourly lower high. Pretty much. For run, looking for a weekly higher low as well, and anything over 42.61 will be one. So not a bad time to start scouting for a potential weekly higher low. Ideally, what we'll see is and it's a very early positioning, right? Because essentially, if you were to play every single hourly oversold bounce, one of those hourly oversold bounces are likely to develop into a daily trend change, which then set the weekly higher low. So obviously, there's a lot of steps for that needs to happen first. First, you want to play a big hourly bounce that could potentially change the hourly trend, which would set the daily low. At that point, you want to see daily bounce follow through to create enough space for a potential daily higher low. And then if the bulls can set a daily higher low and break to higher highs, then we'll have that weekly higher low set. Okay, so just would be very early positioning, but hourly oversold conditions, not a bad place to start looking for play. FSLR on the daily time. So also big volume day. Well, higher volume day, elevated volume day, selling pretty much throughout the entire day on the hourly time frame. No bounce as well, but bears will be scouting a lower high under 87.41 as soon as bounce. Like there was a channel here that it lost. Where is it? Bottom. Nope. So broke out of this channel. Would not be surprised by a back test. Ideally, though, if you're a bear, you'll see some more follow through before that back test to position off for a hourly lower high. Anything over 78.69 will be a daily higher low. Bears have yet to confirm that hourly downtrend. If we were to get a gap down, I don't love FSLR as much for the gap down plays. Just it's not as much. It's not as aggressive as a dump, and I don't love FSLR in general. In regard, like if you look at the chart, so this is what TAN's consolidation looked like before a big leg up, and then FSLR had a significantly different look before its leg up. So TAN had that little consolidation down here. It's just been pretty much a straight shot, whereas FSLR has had all these peaks and trials. I guess you could say that it's technically not as like it's not as absurd of a chart because of that as well, though. So I suppose that's something to consider. Hmm. Ideally for FSLR, we'll get a test of this channel. If we could get daily oversold conditions and test the bottom of this channel, looking for that weekly higher low, that's really my preferred play for FSLR. I don't really love. Okay, that's it. I will see you all soon. Thanks for tuning in.